Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to do a special selection right now, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. If you have your own song that you'd like to request for special selection, you can find a link to do so in the description below. Today's request comes at us from Autumn Sphere, Thy Darkened Shade, Liber Lvcifer. Lucifer with a V, because it's cult. Magnum opus of black metal, deep, serious, and devoted, highly progressive and technical. You will love their bass. You know what? I was a little worried about black metal, but you sold me on the bass. So, let's get in here and see what's going on with Thy Darkened Shade. Interesting. So it's in 4/4. But the emphasized beat of the phrasing changes. Although now I've got a 3. Oh, nope. Shifting time arounds. Ooh, really playing around with the meter there. We got a little bit of a punk vibe. Yeah, I am digging what the bass is laying down though. So we got 4, 4, 6, 4, 4, 4, 4. Oh, that was slick. Just a lot of power behind those vocals. Interesting, the odd syncopation on the snare hits. What? Hey, I got the time signature for this section. I know. 7 bars of 4 and a bar of 5. This part's interesting. This is not very black metal at all. Kind of reminds me of more aggressive hard rock. Now we're transitioning back in now. Yeah, I like that layering there between the bass and the left guitar. Gotta get that sonic assault in here. That's unexpected. Yeah, that bass melody down there. gorgeous. Yeah, including the counterpoint in there between the choir and the guitars. The bass is laying down a different idea. Okay, that was interesting. Ah, yeah, it's over. So I kind of wish that this was requested just one person earlier, um, so that we could have had it on Thursday of last week. I think this would have been a fantastic track for Hi-Fi Black Metal Week, and you guys just won't let me go. The week before Hi-Fi Black Metal Week, we had some black metal on I think on that Friday. For creator request, we had black metal. I think we had black metal. Oh, we did for album review. We checked out that on Saturday, and then we had Black Metal Week, and now Monday during Hip Hop Week, we still have black metal. Uh, you black metal fans, you're persistent if nothing else. You're gonna make me love this genre eventually. Um, all right, so there's a lot of black metal in here, right? We have the tremolo picking, we have guitar counterpoint, we have the growls, we have blast beats, double bass kicks, and something I learned last week, which is pretty cool, is this thing called a gravity blast, where it's like a blast beat where you just hit a snare, or I guess you could do it on any tom or anything, actually. Anything you're hitting with a mallet, any sort of drum. But like a blast beat, you're just hitting it real fast with your hand. But like a gravity blast actually utilizes the edge of the drum, like the metal part, the rim, uh, as like a fulcrum for the drum stick. So you actually utilize it to get a double hit out of every time that you actually put your hand down, and it gets these ridiculously fast snare hits. And I don't remember what song or band it was last week where this came up. But yeah, I had mentioned that the snare hits were just way too fast. I couldn't believe it. And some people in the comments are like, hey, that's a gravity blast. And I'm like, whoa, that's neat. I went and looked it up and watched a demonstration of it. And I think that's what's happening here. We got some gravity blasts next to the blast beats. Uh, like what I mean by that is like sometimes we'll have blast, sometimes we'll have gravity blast. Not that he's doing them simultaneously next to each other or something. Although, man, could you imagine gravity blasts like on your low tom with your right hand, gravity blasts on the snare with your left hand, double bass kicks going, like the amount of raw sound and power you can get out of that. You got nothing bright on top of it. You can't do any cymbal work, but I mean, just the low end boomingness. I don't know. Let's get back to Thy Darkened Shade. So yeah, they have a lot of black metal elements in here though. Um, and they pair that with a very clean, concentrated, uh, what's this word? Production. I can clearly hear both of the guitars on the left and right. I can hear the bass that's centered. The vocals are in a very strange decision above the band, very pop or mainstream style. The drums are very clear. The bass is even clear, despite being in the center section with the drums and the growls. Like everything's kind of in this area of range, this lower end range, and the bass is still hearable. in a lot of sections. I'm not going to say that I heard it all the time. Sometimes I really had to key into it when it was going for the lower stuff. Especially if there was double bass kicks going on or the growling was going on at the same time. Like sometimes it became a little hard to hear. But for the most part, I think it was a pretty clear bass instrument for black metal, right? So we have this very clear production. But what I mean that it's also very constrained is that while we do have the panning and every instrument is clear, there's fuzz, but it's not overpowering everything, right? We're not into lo-fi black metal where the fuzz is the texture. The fuzz here is more of an additional ingredient to the sound rather than the main sound itself. But everything still feels very tight and restrained to me, which is just very black metal. Like I mentioned last week, you know, you can go with better fidelity production, but there still is sort of a cutoff point for black metal before it kind of stops sounding black metal, because black metal is not just the music that's on the paper, the compositional techniques, more so than what I'd say most genres in the metal subgenre areas are. Black metal is very much a production, a textural thing, an atmospheric thing. It's the way that it sounds more than what's being played. So, you know, like I kind of learned last week, there's a ceiling for how high of a fidelity the production can become before it kind of veers away from black metal entirely. And I think this is sort of a really good display of that, where each individual instrument is clearly heard, clearly placed, but it's still very compressed down sound wise, so that if you aren't actively listening and you're just taking it all in as a casual listener or whatever, it's going to sound like a unified element. It's just going to have that wall of sound aspect to it, which is exactly what black metal typically goes for. It's that oppressiveness, that single auditory sonic assault. And they do a very good job of sort of walking that line where there is clarity in the production, but the sound of the song is still black metal. It's still that single concept. And I appreciate that, right? I think this is a very good middle point for me of trying to find black metal that I would enjoy. Now, on the other side of this, you know, looking at compositional side, black metal is, in my experience, typically rather simple. You just play a lot. And yeah, that's a bit reductive, right? But I mean, guitars are playing 16th notes using tremolo picking. The drummers you playing 16th notes, whether that's double bass kicks or blast beats or whatever. It's about getting a lot of attacks into a little bit amount of time to create that oppressiveness. And you don't really need to play around with notes too much to achieve that. We've seen black metal in the past where it's kind of derived from that hard rock idea of sitting on a pedal note for 75% of your phrase and then having a little embellishing riff at the end of it before returning to your pedal note, which we did see some of that in here, where I mentioned that it sounded like a more aggressive hard rock. We galloped on a single note for like 3 bars, and then in the 4th bar we had a little run up before returning back to that baseline galloping. So, you know, just do that really fast and you've got black metal. And we've seen bands in the past who do that. Very simple guitar riffs, very simple drum patterns, just kind of focusing more on the frequency of notes. You know, 4 hits per beat to get that 16th note, just a ton of attacks in a short amount of time kind of vibe, and growling over it and calling it a day, right? And that's not to say that there isn't more progressive black metal or more complex black metal, as is the case here, but at least in my limited exposure to it, that's more of the norm. Somewhere in that area, not always that simple, but somewhere close to that. This almost pulls me into a tech death area where it is just a constant changing up of ideas. This reminds me a lot of a blackened kind of arch spire. And to me, that is just very not black metal. And again, you know, I want to preface this. This is just my experience with black metal as a genre. I don't have a lot of experience with it. I've heard 15, 20 songs tops, maybe. Maybe a little more because we have checked out 2 black metal albums. So that's like 16 songs right there. Okay, so maybe like 30, 35. But a vast majority of those came from 2 bands. Like I said, album reactions. I haven't heard a lot of black metal, is what I'm getting at. So, but just from my limited exposure, it is kind of more of a simple genre typically. And to hear something like this that feels so outside of the typical area for me, but still keeping a lot of that black metal vibe is mind blowing. This is certainly black metal that I could get into. I still have a problem with the overall sound of it. I think that black metal is just a very aggressive, abrasive genre, and I'm still gonna need some time to warm up to it, even if I find one that has compositional and production elements that work better for me. And I do think that this might be one of the best examples of a black metal song where the non-traditional black metal elements do work very well for me, but it still requires me to warm up to it a little bit. So like some of those elements though, we have our meter, right? The meter is all over the place. And even when it stays static, it refuses to be static for entire phrases. There was one moment there at the end when I said that, I've got this time signature finally. Because, a lot of the time signatures in here, I have no idea what they were doing, right? I'm not even going to lie, they were just bonkers all over the place. Maybe changing every bar, changing every other bar, whatever the reason, I couldn't really get a reading on it. But there was one moment where I cheekily said, hey, I got the time signature here. And that's because it was in 4/4 for 7 bars. The fifth bar, sorry, the eighth bar of the 8-bar phrase is in 5/4. So every 8 bars, we add an extra beat to the phrase. They refuse to even let this simple moment exist simply. Everything has to have at least a little extra technical flair added to it. And this is the most basic idea. I mentioned earlier that we had one moment that was 4/4/6, 4/4/4/4, right? Just a random 6 thrown into the middle, not even the end. It was thrown into the middle. Which could also be read, because if we want to look at it more of an 8-bar phrase, which just makes more sense to me, it would be 4/4/3/3, 4/4/4/4, 4/4/3/3/4, and it's just like this weird little pocket of oddity there. And then of course, those were the 2 that I picked up on. We had a 3/4 idea that we heard at the beginning, but it was also met with strange accented beats where we might accent beat 1 of the first bar, but then beat 2 of the second bar, and then beat 1 of the 5th bar, and like it was just kind of all over the place. Like the accented hits were just random. I couldn't really find a pattern to it, and it made the 3/4 feel wrong. It felt like, especially since I expect downbeats to be on prominent beats, or I expect accented hits to be on prominent downbeats. Things like 1 or 3 or 2 and 4 if we're in 4/4. If we're in 5, 1 and 4 are prominent beats, or 1 and 3. Like I've tried really hard to find some sort of pattern to it in a variety of different time signatures, and I just couldn't. So either their accented hits were truly sort of patternless on a micro level. I mean, maybe on a macro level, we look at like 24-bar phrase and we can see a pattern here, right? But at least for me, looking at 2, 3, 4-bar phrases, I really couldn't find a pattern to it. In which case, it feels kind of timeless. I really couldn't nail down a time signature for it. If I went back and listened to it knowing that I would have a problem with it, what I would do is listen to, 20 or 30 beats and figure out where the accents are, and kind of approach it from that macro level, like looking at a full 30 beats rather than something like a 6 or a 10. But yeah, I'm completely lost on that. And there are several sections like that where the phrasing itself never seemed to have some sort of pattern to it, mixed with odd accented strikes. And it just makes the rhythmic component to a lot of these sections very difficult to nail down. I think you'll notice that you rarely saw me moving my body to this song, which is quite a bit different from other other reactions I've done. And it's honestly because I had a real hard time finding the patterns to a lot of it. Another way that this song is a bit more progressive or technical than other black metal is in the variety of sounds. So I don't think, well, the variety of melodic components, we should say that, because I don't think any of the instruments really change timbre. I'm pretty sure the guitars, the bass, the drums, yeah, none of them really, we didn't have multiple vocal deliveries. I don't think we had multiple guitar tones. Because the only time I think we would have done that is if there was a solo section for one of the guitarists to clean up a little bit, and I don't think we had one of those. And the bass was the same throughout, drums were the same throughout. So yeah, there's no timbre changes. So it's not really the sound of the song. And we really didn't change much around with, well, we kind of did with chords. We had very similar chordal progressions throughout the entire song, but they did play around with microtonality and chromaticism in a few places. So I don't really want to say that that changes the chordal structure, but it definitely does momentarily break up the chordal ideas in some places. But yeah, so it's the melodic components. So there's definitely a lot of sections in here that are very black metal. Like I mentioned, 16th notes from every instrument, just kind of hammering it home, bringing all this intensity to the song. But we also heard the hard rock gallop idea that sits on the bass line. We heard some notes being held out in places. Not even gallops or repeated attacks, just like holding out whole and half notes, 2 and 4 beat notes, and allowing them to just linger without playing that same note again multiple times, which is what black metal typically does. And we had these walking bass lines as well, creating melodic moments, even at the end, right? When we hit the dark choir moment, I think is what I want to describe it as. The guitars are kind of doing chordal stuff. We have the vocalist vocalizing over it. But to me, the bass leads it. The bass is the highest ranged instrument at the time in a couple of places and is constantly moving. There's a forward direction to it, and it seems non-linear as well. So yeah, there's just a lot of moments where the bass leads, which again just feels very different from kind of my idea of typical black metal. Not to mention that a lot of black metal we've listened to, the bass typically just follows along with what everyone else is doing, which kind of is that constant attack. Speaking of linearity, though, not just in the melodic component there at the end, but also the song throughout. The hard rock gallop section came in twice, and I think that's the only time that I noticed a repeated moment. Now, a lot of that is that there's a lot of stuff in here that obscures landmarks. Like I said, I had a real hard time nailing down time signature. The vocals are just not anything I would have picked up on. Lyrics are not anything that I would have picked up on. So it's real difficult for me to find landmarks in the vocal work. And then the guitars and bass were just constantly, at least to my ears, always doing new things. If they were repeating anything from the past, I didn't pick up on it. So the entire song, at least to my ears, is extremely linear, which again is kind of not what I associate with black metal. They go for more simplicity in the music, not just in the individual lines, but also in the overall structure of the song. And of course, I want to clarify one more time, I'm not saying all black metal's like this. Just kind of the majority of my limited experience with the genre. So this song goes against a lot of elements that I think are not integral to integral. I don't know where the R goes in that word. You ever happen to you when you just you just speak, right, and everything sounds normal, but when you have to think about a word and you can't quite figure how to say it or anything like even spelling. Like you just kind of like write, right? But then you focus on writing and you're like, how do people do this? How do I spell things? I think it's integral. Yeah, integral to black metal. Um, they kind of abandoned some of the ideas that are so typical for the genre and introduce ideas from other genres or concepts from other more complex styles, right? But the thing is, and what I think works so well here, is that they never change timbre. I think that is so important. Even at the end, when we kind of go for that dark choir thing and we bring in the clean vocals, the guitars and bass and drum do not change their sound. It allows everything in here to feel unified. And part of that not changing the sound also goes with the production, where everything's placed, how everything is mixed, retaining this core identity on a auditory level, not musical, but the way that it sounds overall, the atmosphere, the environment, the way the instruments' voices are created. None of that changes, which keeps everything coherent. It gives everything the tinge of that black metal element, and it makes everything feel, at least on a baseline level, blackened. And I think that goes a long way to not only making this a standout black metal song, but also allowing the song to feel cohesive despite all of the jumping around. Like I mentioned, there's a lot of variety in this track, but not at any point did I ever think, something felt out of place or was too big of a jump or too drastic of a change. Everything fit, everything flowed, and this is what I'm talking about in other songs when I say that, they lack a core identity or an auditory identity. This is what I'm talking about. No matter what style of music, no matter which instrument is leading the section, no matter how the rhythmic components change, whether we're doing straight 16th notes or galloping or holding out notes, the feeling, the vibe of the song never changes. And it allows everything to feel like it fits together. And yeah, it was a fantastic decision to do that. I don't know if it was intentional or not. I don't know if they thought, everything else is changing. We need a consistent element here, right? Or if it just happened to be what they did, they love their guitar sound, so they just never changed it kind of vibe. It might be a little happy accident. But the song could have been very disjointed if they had decided to play around with tone as well. So. Yeah, just really great job on that. Um, and then like just the vibe of the entire song. Like I can't really talk about specific things because, like I said, a lot of stuff went over my head. Um, time signature wise, just there's a lot of stuff going on at any one time. It's highly linear. There's lots of sections. So speaking about specifics is more difficult for me since it's really hard to pick up on any patterns going on here. But the overall vibe of this song to me is just aggression. I can't really say anything else about this other than the fact that I felt like even when we didn't have straight 16th notes going on, there was this oppressive force around me. And it might just be coming from the production as well. When we have the 16th notes and that stereotypical black metal vibe, it felt like a physical weight. Like I've always talked about before, the sonic assault, the oppressive heaviness of the music. But even when we don't have the constant attacks, there's still this angstiness, this anger, this oppressive element to the music, baked right into the atmosphere of it. And some of that also might come from the vocals. I touched on this for a moment in the reaction, but there's a lot of production on the vocals that make it huge and big and wide and just booming, right? I had mentioned that it's very odd for a black metal vocalist to be so high up in the mix. Usually, black metal pushes it down into the mix. We saw a lot of that last week. And here it's bright, it's present, it is right in your face. It's really difficult to ignore it's not part of the mix itself. It sits above it. It's there to deliver the message. And it's growling. I can't pick up on on the message. We'll get into that when we dive into the lyrics, but it's there above the music, very pop and radio rock style, not very black metal at all, but it still feels very black metal. I can't really argue that the vocals sound like anything other than black metal. So it's a really interesting way to go about doing that. But because it's so in your face and larger than life, it feels. I think it adds to some of the aggressiveness of the music. It almost feels like there's this booming entity, yelling at me. It feels very inhuman, pretty typical for black metal or kind of a lot of harsh vocals, very inhuman element to them. And then I think it's double tracked and widened. It's got some reverb on it. The trail off on it is just massive. It allows these notes to ring and just kind of linger for a long time. So yeah, I think all of that just kind of brings together this idea of this, really oppressive, aggressive vibe. And I'm not sure what emotion to tie to that. Like, I don't think it's anger. Um, it just feels like raw oppression, maybe emotionless oppression. It's just a weight. The entire song has it. So let's dive into the lyrics here and see what's going on. Says, "O relish father that fetches revenge into the gathering, for the delving of light ageless that the eyeless embraces awless." I like the repetition of less, ageless, eyeless, awless. "Reconstruct me and unshackle me through thy fall. Boundless seals to exclaim thy revelations, Loki irradiate Ragnarok, father of Fenrir, Odin senescence impend, and I befall awakened alongside the Midgard serpent. Glowing, soaring, the seeds of serpent self-sowing, in the reveries of the undead to enthrall the prana bled, vanishing, dreading, opfers of the lowest rearing. Exacerbate thy child's wisdom to blacken the visions that inhale Malkuth's tempests." Okay, y'all. I thought I've been getting pretty good at breaking down lyrics and doing some poetic analysis. And thy darkened shade is definitely tossing a little curveball at me and saying there's still room to grow, Padawan. Every line is going right over my head. Like, okay, so Lucifer is in the title of the song, right? And I'm kind of get an element of that. "Reconstruct me and unshackle me through thy fall, O Father." So it sounds like a prayer to Lucifer to give me power or give me strength through your fall, which I assume is the fall. He was God's right hand man, and had a war against God, and then went through his descent to become the owner or leader or manager of hell, however you want to look at that. His descent, his fall from glory, from being an angel to the fallen angel. But then he brings in Norse mythology. Boundless seals to exclaim thy revelations, Loki irradiate Ragnarok, father of Fenrir, Odin senescence impend, and I befall awakened alongside the Midgard serpent. So I don't know what irradiate means, or senescence, or impend. So I'm kind of lost a bit with what any of this means to tie into other stuff. Um, yeah, I'm gonna need a dictionary for this because even the next stanza speaks about the reveries of the undead to enthrall the prana bled. I don't know what prana is. Vanishing, dreading, opfers of the lowest rearing. I don't know what an opfer is. And then we have more mythology. It says, exacerbate thy child's wisdom to blacken the visions that inhale Malkuth's tempests. I don't know who Malkuth is. Yeah, we're going to keep going. We'll see where this goes. Maybe I'll find a line or something that helps put some of this in its place. That's happened before. Just a key sentence that unlocks what's going on. Lantern everlasting, thy immortality's passage I aspire to seize. Hanker to seek Thalmael's keys. Ravish my heart, envenom the soil. Bequeath the vacant shells. Sacrifice spirit forms of funerary bells. Prometheus, supreme epitome. The black sun's chariots, the ancient flame feasts for the chosen to ascend as gods and set the world aflame. So, I mean, that right there, he says something like, you're going to give me the tools to destroy the world kind of thing, you know? We are the chosen, right? The ancient flame feasts for the chosen, us, Lucifer's followers, to ascend from mortals to become gods and set the world aflame, right? So you're going to give us the tools to move up in the ranks. Unbound essence of deep, immense Lotan, the seven-headed dragon, consuming in oceans the cosmic insolence. Lo Satan, Lo Set, Lo Ahriman, Lo Typhon. Are these other names for Satan? Set sounds familiar because I think, isn't Set one of the Egyptian gods? I could be missing on that. I don't know who Ahriman and Typhon are, though. With devotion that scorches human clay, with the will that transmutes draconian selves, I invoke thee, Father Lucifer. So yeah, I'm not getting the details, but this sounds like a prayer to Lucifer to begin the next stage. It's possibly also, I mean, it could also be an incantation, right? A spell to summon Lucifer to grant this next, this next idea, this next movement for their followers who are committing the ritual to ascend to their god selves and set the world on fire. Purified soul lurer, hallowed egregore ruler, when neither wails nor echoes will poison thy stillness, I will be thee once more. Lo Kingu, lo Loki, lo Prometheus, lo Diabolus. Offer me this night thy light and blazes, thy Tamatin crown for the shadowy Ein Sof emission. A lot more words with capital letters. I'm assuming they're referencing mythological people that I got nothing for. And we got more ahead of us. Kether Prana. There's Prana again. I don't know what Kether is either. Diffuse into Thalmael. Abaddon eye comprehends somatic ruins. With Satan's radiance, I release the self into the 11 gateways of Sitra Ahra. Nama, Lilith, Adrelmelech, Baal, Belphegor, Asmodeus, Astaroth, Rephokel, Beelzebub, Satanus. So yeah, it sounds like some sort of ritual or prayer to Lucifer and speaks of him through all of his many names and says that we are ready to move to the next step of your plan. Elevate us to godhood so that we may continue your doing and ravish the earth. That's exactly what it sounds like to me. Now, granted, like I said, no details on that. There's probably a ton of little references in there I missed. Little ways that everything's kind of interconnected, but I think I get the overall vibe of it, which works well with kind of what I'm getting out of the song, where it feels like this oppressive weight, right? Which would be assuming that this was a ritual or a prayer that evoked Satan to reveal himself, right? And while this is going on, the wind starts to pick up and all that, and you can feel the earth start to break, all the stereotypical Hollywood things of demons coming in, whatever. The presence of someone as powerful as Lucifer beginning to take form around. But that's kind of all I got here. I don't know if any of that's what other people read into it. I mean, for all I know, the music was created first and the lyrics were added later, Tool style, right? So there's not much of a correlation between the two. But something else that I think ties us back to black metal, which I didn't pick up on until just now, but people have told me last week, is that a core tenet of black metal is satanic imagery and lyricism. And there's been a bit of debate about that. And personally, I think probably because I am a music person, not a lyric person, I look at music first and I see patterns in black metal musically. So to me, black metal is about the musical elements, right? The voice, not the lyrics, how the guitars and drums are utilized, the production elements. So I'm kind of in the camp that black metal doesn't have to be satanic, but like I said, there was still quite a bit of conversation last week about black metal requiring satanic elements. That's what makes it black metal, and this certainly fits in that. This whole thing is about trying to conjure Satan through ritual, or at least through prayer, and in that it is very black metal. So this is where you guys come in. Hit me up in the comments. Let me know what you thought of this track. If there's anything that stood out to you that I didn't talk about, anything that I did talk about you want to extrapolate on, just let me know. Hit me up. Let me know your thoughts. Above the comment section is a description box, and there's a link for Linktree. It'll take you to this menu right here. It has everything related to the channel on it. You can submit your own special selections, join the Patreon, join the Discord, follow me on Twitter, pick up some merch, just a lot of stuff in there. Go ahead and check it out. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for today. Be sure to drop by tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC. We're going to check out another track for Hip Hop Week, as well as look at another special selection. Until next time, remember to be critical but not cynical of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.